Have you ever wondered why God would allow a righteous man to be tested by Satan himself? If God is good and just, why didn't he protect Job from these trials? This story challenges everything we think we know about suffering, justice, and faith. But there is a greater purpose behind it all. Stay with me until the end to uncover the surprising conclusion of this story. In the ethereal silence of heaven, a gathering was about to begin. The sons of God presented themselves before the Most High, their presence radiating celestial splendor. Among them, a distinct figure emerged from the shadows, Satan. His cunning eyes scanned the divine council, his expression a mixture of defiance and craftiness. "Where have you come from?" The Lord's voice resounded like a gentle thunder, filled with authority and mystery. Satan lifted his head with a cold smile. "From roaming through the earth and walking back and forth in it," he replied, as if his casual tone could mask his dark intentions. God's gaze, deep and unfathomable, rested upon him. "Have you considered my servant Job?" the Lord asked. "There is no one on earth like him, a man of integrity and uprightness, who fears God and shuns evil." Satan arched an eyebrow, his smile widening. "Does Job fear God for nothing?" His voice carried a venomous tone, like the whisper of a serpent. "Have you not surrounded him with protection? Have you not blessed the work of his hands? But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and see if he does not curse you to your face." Heaven fell silent. The angels turned their eyes toward the throne, awaiting the response of the Almighty. Then God spoke, his voice carrying an unfathomable purpose. "Very well, everything he has is in your power, but do not lay a hand on him." And so, with this divine permission, Job's fate was sealed for a trial that would shake his soul. But will Job remain faithful? Or will Satan prove that humans only love God when everything is going well? What would you do if you lost everything? Overnight, keep watching because this story will surprise you. Hundreds of miles away, under the scorching sun of the Middle East, the city of Uz thrived with the prosperity of its most esteemed man. Job, a respected patriarch, sat in the shade of his tent, watching his herds graze on distant hills. His face bore the marks of experience, his eyes reflecting the serenity of a man who walked in fear and righteousness before God. His servants moved swiftly, managing the daily routines of a vast estate. Camels and oxen filled the fields, while his sheep were counted by the thousands. Inside his home, his sons and daughters enjoyed abundance, feasting together in a bond of family harmony that brought Job great joy. He sighed, his heart full of gratitude. Every morning, Job offered sacrifices to the Lord, interceding for his children, fearing that in their hearts they might have sinned. But that day, a shadow loomed over Uz. The sky seemed to carry an invisible weight. The wind blew differently in the spiritual realm. Satan was already at work. The first blow was about to strike. If God already knew what was going to happen, why did he allow it? Is Job's faith truly unshakable? Or is Satan right in saying that Job only serves God because of the blessings? In the next act, we will see how the enemy strikes and how Job reacts to the unexpected. Don't miss it. Have you ever wondered how you would react if, in an instant, everything you had worked for collapsed? Your home, your possessions, your family, all lost in a single moment? This is the reality Job is about to face. But will his faith remain unshaken? The sun still shone over Uz as Job rose for another day of work and worship. His heart was at peace, his spirit filled with gratitude. He had no idea that, at that very moment, an invisible storm was brewing. Suddenly, a servant came running, breathless, his face pale with terror. "Master," he shouted, "the Sabaeans attacked. They stole all the oxen and donkeys and killed the servants with the sword. I am the only one who escaped to tell you." Before Job could process the news, another servant arrived, even more desperate. "Fire fell from the sky. It burned up your sheep and the shepherds. Everything was consumed in flames. I alone survived to bring you the news." Job felt his chest tighten, but there was no time to react. A third servant rushed in, his voice trembling. "The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and took all your camels. All your servants were killed. Only I escaped." Job's world began to spin. Within minutes, he had lost nearly all of his wealth. But the worst was yet to come. Have you ever noticed how, when one problem arises, others seem to follow? As if suffering never comes alone. But is there a purpose behind it all? As Job struggled to comprehend his misfortune, a fourth servant arrived. His face drenched in tears. "Master," his voice broke, "your children, they were at your eldest son's house. A mighty wind came from the desert, struck the house, and it collapsed. They are all dead." Silence. Job stood motionless. The weight of the news crushed him like a mountain. His children, his joy, the reason for his daily prayers, were gone. What would you do in Job's place? Would you scream? Would you rebel against God? Would you abandon your faith? The patriarch fell to his knees. His hands clutched the earth, and he tore his robes in grief. In an act of deep sorrow and reverence, he shaved his head, and to the shock of everyone around him, he bowed down to the ground. And then, in the midst of his tragedy, Job spoke. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." Have you ever seen someone praise God in the middle of their pain? How did Job manage to do that? In heaven, Satan watched in frustration. He expected Job to curse God, to rebel. But instead, the wounded man worshipped. But was this enough to prove his faithfulness? Or would Satan attempt something even worse? In the next act, we will see that Job's trials were just beginning. If he didn't fall now, will he endure physical suffering? Stay with me to discover the next twist in this story. When suffering touches the body. If losing his possessions and family was already an unimaginable trial, how would you react if your own body were struck by a terrible disease? Would Job's faith withstand this blow? The second challenge in heaven. The heavenly council, Satan once again presented himself before the Lord. His expression was dark, but frustration flickered in his gaze. Job had still not cursed God. "Have you considered my servant Job?" God asked once more. "He still maintains his integrity, despite everything you have done to him." Satan clenched his teeth and replied, "Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his life. But stretch out your hand now and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord looked at Satan, and with unfathomable mystery, granted him permission. "Very well, he is in your hands, but spare his life." Have you ever felt that even after enduring so much suffering, the trials were still not over? Job was about to experience a pain that would go far beyond the soul. Unbearable pain. Within days, Job's skin began to change. At first, small sores appeared. Then, painful boils spread across his entire body. He was feverish, shivering, and the pain was so intense that it robbed him of sleep. Job left his house and sat among the ashes, mourning in silence. He picked up a piece of broken pottery and scraped at his wounds, trying to relieve the unbearable itching. But nothing helped. His flesh was covered in festering sores, his breath had become repulsive, and his skin burned like fire. Now, beyond his pain and loss, Job faced rejection. Servants avoided his gaze. The children of the city mocked him. From the most respected man in the region, Job had become an outcast. Have you ever felt abandoned when you needed support the most? Then came the final blow. His wife, the last person, left by his side, approached him and spoke bitterly. "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die!" Her words were like daggers. Had the last person beside him also abandoned him? But with a weak yet steady voice, Job replied, "You speak as a foolish woman speaks. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Even covered in suffering, he did not curse God. But would his faith survive the next test? Friends who became accusers. Three figures approached slowly. They were his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. When they saw him from a distance, they barely recognized him. They tore their robes in mourning and sat beside Job in silence. For 7 days and 7 nights, no one spoke a word. Only the wind broke the heavy stillness. Have you ever had friends who, instead of helping, only made your pain worse? When Job finally broke the silence, his words were filled with bitterness. "May the day of my birth perish. Why did I not die when I came from the womb?" The silence ended. His friends looked at one another. Then Eliphaz, the eldest, took a deep breath and spoke. "Job, has the innocent ever perished? Those who sow trouble reap trouble." Bildad added, "Job, if your children sinned, God handed them over to their wrongdoing. But if you are pure, he will restore everything to you." Zophar was even harsher. "Job, God is actually being merciful to you. You deserve worse." Their words were like poisoned arrows. Job felt his soul shatter. He knew he was innocent. But why wasn't God answering? Have you ever cried out to God and felt like he was silent? In the next act, we will see the conclusion of this story. Will Job continue to endure, or will his faith finally break? Don't miss the shocking ending. Have you ever cried out to God, expecting an answer, but all you heard was silence? Job waited. He suffered, and he waited some more. But God seemed distant. He endured the accusations of his friends, who insisted he had sinned. He listened to their harsh words and bore the weight of abandonment. But deep inside, something stirred. He didn't understand. Why is God treating me like this? I have walked in righteousness. Why does he allow the wicked to prosper while I, who have always been just, am being crushed? Job longed to speak with God, to present his case before him. He wanted an answer. And then finally, God spoke. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to hear God's voice directly? From the midst of a whirlwind came a powerful voice. It was not an explanation. It was not a justification. It was something much greater. Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Job's heart stopped. He had wanted an answer, and now God stood before him. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who marked off its dimensions? On what were its bases set? The voice of the Almighty thundered. God began describing the wonders of creation, the seas, the stars, the most powerful creatures of the earth. Job listened, feeling small before the greatness of the Creator. Do you have an arm like God's? Can your voice thunder like his? God's response was not what Job expected. He wanted to understand why, but God revealed who he is. Have you ever noticed that sometimes God doesn't give us direct answers, but instead reminds us of his sovereignty? Job humbled himself completely. I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. But now my eyes have seen you. He no longer needed answers. He only needed to trust. But Job's story was not over yet. Job's restoration. Then, God turned to Job's friends. His words were severe. My anger burns against you, for you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has. God commanded them to bring sacrifices and asked Job to pray for them. Despite everything they had said, Job forgave them and interceded on their behalf. And then, something incredible happened. The Lord restored Job's fortunes when he prayed for his friends and gave him twice as much as he had before. His wealth was multiplied, his flocks doubled, his home was restored, and God gave him new sons and daughters, the most beautiful in the land. Job lived for 140 more years. He saw his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. His pain was not forgotten, but it was transformed. Now let me ask you, can you trust God even when you don't understand His ways? If this story touched your heart, like this video and share it with someone who needs this message.